Good morning. It's the 15th of February 2025. It's wet. It's it's 6.5 degrees centigrade. It's wet outside, and yesterday was wet all over Ireland too. That's what we have. I don't know if it's any better or worse. I was in Iceland. It's very wet as well. Not very cold, very, very wet. Anyway, I made a video there this morning on the situation in the world and what's happening. It impacts us because this woke agenda is making us all worse off and taking away our personal freedoms in a way we never thought imaginable. But one of the things I tend to look for is patterns. Is there a pattern? That noise is the rain off the tree falling on the top of the van. But is there a pattern? And there is a pattern. And that is the Germans. They're not a natural race like the French or the Spanish, I believe. I'm not too well up on that, but for the last 150 years they have been a country, and that's the main thing. Now, the thing about them is they never make small mistakes. They never make small mistakes. And we were told when we were becoming members of the EU and asked to vote to be on the EU that one of the great things about EU membership was the Germans would be controlled. And that was a lie. That was a lie, and that was wishful thinking. They are not controlled. They're running the EU. And also, Britain withdrew from the EU because the Germans were bullying Britain and they voted for Brexit. And despite Keir Starmer's efforts, they're hardly going to go back into it again. So that counterbalance of Britain is gone. So Germany has it all at the foot. Now, they strangely never make small mistakes, as I say. I think, like many peoples, they have a huge tendency to believe the communist, cultural, Marxist, left-wing agenda. They think that by socialism you're going to have happiness. And of course, as I continually point out, it's the exact opposite. Stalin, wasn't he running a socialist regime, communist in Russia? It wasn't very happy for a lot of people. Hitler was National Socialist Workers' Party of Deutschland, of Germany. So whether he was a socialist or not, he believed the way to get votes was to proclaim socialism. Here in Ireland, nearly every party has a socialist aspect. In fact, Fine Gael, which is extremely much in line with the American Democratic Party, which is very socialist in America, is probably the most right-wing of all the parties. All the rest, including into Sinn Féin, all proclaim the Red Revolution of October 1917 in Russia as being the ideal model, and the Venezuelan model and the Cuban model as being ideal. Why they get voted for with that, I don't know. I can't answer you that. But anyway, the thing about the Germans is, my theory is, that they have to be annihilated or crushed 3 times within a specific period, roughly. It's not exactly 3 times, it could be 6 times or it could be twice. But it's from experience that we have, they were crushed in the mad war over the shooting of Archduke Ferdinand, which people from around here died in that war. We never heard of the Egypt before, or who he was, or what he was, or who he was, or give the tuppeny damn about him. But we were more interested in the price of spuds and wool from sheep and eggs. But anyway, he got killed and it was considered bad enough to start a war. So that war ended in Germany being crushed. And the Treaty of Versailles, where they were forced to give reparations and pay for the war, which led up to the rise of Hitler. And then you had the Second World War and they were crushed again. And if you project that, there was 1918 was the armistice, 1928, 1938. There was only really 21 years till you had serious war break out in 1939. So 21 years in between the settlement of the first one and the start of the second one. And now we have had no German-led war in recent times, but they're pushing for a war in Ukraine and they want the United States to do it for them. So Germany is running the EU. And it's now looking like the wheels are coming off the EU. There's widespread opposition in Hungary, in Serbia, and in the United States now with the new Trump administration. And so there's a party in Germany of the Alternative for Deutschland, but it won't get enough votes, in my opinion, to make a big difference. It'll still put in the communists. So what is going to happen in Germany is it has to be crushed again. And I put a bit of thought into what the formula is for it, and I think it's 120 years. Mightn't be exact to that, but I think that's it. Right? So Germany was crushed twice in the last century, and if you take from we said the start of the war in 1914 to 2014, now 2020, it's only 110. So I think roughly 2030 you'll see Germany completely crushed, if not before that. Now, there's no need for me to reiterate its crazy policy in closing down its nuclear energy, its crazy policy in allowing the Biden administration to blow up its Nord Stream gas, and its crazy policies on energy, on immigration mostly. And it's immigration that's the worst one. And in J.D. Vance's speech to them the day before yesterday, I think it was, or recently anyway, to the Munich, what do you call it, Security Summit, he conference or whatever you call it, he pointed out that. So the problem is from within, and we in the EU can't prosper. We can never prosper while the Germans have a rule. So first of all, it's high time the EU was pulled out of action and collapsed. Any new arrangement will have to avoid the Germans. The Germans are going to have to be kept on their own. They can't be allowed to influence other countries. I mean, it would be considered ridiculous if Adolf Hitler was allowed to be received and to speak at conferences in Ireland, in Britain, in France before the war. He was considered extreme then, and he was extreme. And yet the Germans can make laws and make directives for the EU right now. I mean, it is completely ridiculous. So what I think, folks, on about 8 minutes is I think you'll see Germany collapse again. And they'll bring us all down with it to a certain degree. But maybe the realization will come that you can't have Germany in the mix at all. They're a sort of mad. Now, some Germans have contributed to funds I've raised to stop the windmills, and they're not all bad, but there's not enough of them. There's not enough of them to cry foul. There's not enough of them to put a stop to this. And in the upcoming elections, over half of them will vote for this old nonsense. There was an attack in Munich the other day, some foreigner. So they crave this. They believe that immigration is the greatest thing ever. It's a very, very strange philosophy. Now, don't forget, I did a survey in the year 2000 and I discovered that 54% of American people had German blood, that there was a good degree of German blood. If you worked it out scientifically, it meant that 54%, over half of all Americans, had German origins. And Trump is half German. His father was from Germany. His mother was from Scotland. And that thing is in him. You can see it in him. So that doesn't mean I'm making any issue about it. But their philosophy is somebody makes a suggestion. Oh, hydrogen. Oh, we'll go for that. And they go for it. They go for it with a gusto. They never stop to assess or anything. I mean, Hitler had Western Europe conquered. He was probably in the position, if he hadn't invaded Russia, that he could have negotiated a settlement where he'd owned the whole thing. But he invaded Russia. Having had a treaty with Stalin, he invaded Russia. Stalin knew it would take millions of people, deaths, to beat the Germans. And he went for the peace initiative in which Hitler awarded him the 3 Baltic states. And all Hitler had to do was stay out of it. Then he said, oh, we need more land, and he went invading the Ukraine and Western Russia. And that's where he perished. And he went for St. Petersburg, which is the gem, the jewel in the crown of Russia. They consider that their second, well, Moscow is their greatest city, but they consider St. Petersburg as their showcase. And that's where all the fighting was. So you see that now, and don't forget, St. Petersburg is named after St. Peter. They're Christians. So I think that's where we're going. We're heading to see the Germans crushed for the third time, and I think the period is 120 years, give or take 5 years. And then it'll all blow over, we'll not see it, and in about 40 years' time, in about 2070, they'll be built up to such a degree, they'll have to be crushed again. And they'll be crushed again in about 2120 and 2160. About that period, that'll never stop in the world. And it could be that devious people or smart people, that this immigration is a method to put foreigners in there, that there might be a little less nutcases. I don't know, will that work? I don't think it will. I don't think that you're not going to get Irish people or British people to emigrate to work in Germany. And I was talking to a lady yesterday who was away in Germany on a bit of a holiday and some bit of business, and they told me she said it's unbelievably cold. Oh, you'd freeze in it. It's cold. See, it's a continental climate. And we think we need heat here, but I believe you need a lot of heat and a lot of energy in Germany to keep warm. And they're suffering now as we go ahead. Their economy is in collapse, and they got a dressing down from J.D. Vance, the US Vice President, yesterday, which they badly needed. But I can tell you one thing. They will not listen to reason. You cannot reason with the average German. It cannot be done. That's the way it is. We can sit back and have to bear and grin and bear their demise and their end for the next 40 years, which I think will come within the next 5 years. Folks, that's all. Comment underneath. The Germans, remember this, they never make small mistakes. They never make small mistakes. An old friend of mine used to say, Mark Twain said, the German sense of humour is no laughing matter. And they have that imitation of being jackboot people, but a lot of them are all right. A lot of them are sensible enough, but that's not enough. There's not enough of them. It's the same situation as me and my people who voted for me in the recent elections. We know what's happening is wrong, but there's not enough people prepared to back us. But there'll be an election in Germany soon, and Alternative for Deutschland will probably do well, but they'll still keep them out. They don't accept democracy, and Hitler only accepted democracy while it worked for him. Comment underneath. That's it. Never make small mistakes. We never make small mistakes. Good luck.